Right now, the National Weather Desk, wildfires burn in drought-stricken Washington state.
Officials say this is creating the potential for rapid spread of any new fires.
While smoke from Canada is still polluting skies over the United States.
Now, those years were also bad smoke years for the U.S., but this year has just blown them out of the water.
We'll take you out into the ocean to see the elements that help hurricanes form.
Lies a storm factory. It's a place we call the main development region.
Learn how icy hail forms on hot weather days.
That hail forms from the water droplets going up and refreezing and then coming back down and melting and going back up.
And see efforts to control an invasive species in the Great Lakes.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. For most of this year, South and Central Texas have seen some of the worst drought conditions in the nation. That includes the area around San Antonio. Overnight, some much-needed rain fell across the region. Some places saw more than 4 inches in just 24 hours. Before this storm, the rain deficit for the year was more than 4 inches. And they could get even more rain later today because parts of South Central and Southeast Texas are at risk for more severe thunderstorms. The Storm Prediction Center issued a 2 out of 5 risk for a swath of South Texas. It's not a very big area, but more than 8 million people live here, including both San Antonio and Houston. Severe wind gusts and hail are the biggest threats. A wildfire continues to burn southeast of Seattle, Washington, with strong winds and dry vegetation helping to spread the flames. Meteorologist Stella Stun spoke with officials on the fire line about how they are combating the fire and when they hope to have it out.
Firefighters let us go past the road closures to show us the damage left behind by the Red Bridge Road fire burning in Teanaway. This fire is feeding off of dry timber and grasses, and its growth is being fueled by gusty winds and bone-dry air. Despite critical fire conditions, fire officials are hopeful they can get the Red Bridge Road fire controlled in the coming days. 7 miles east of Clayelum in Teanaway.
It's unseasonably dry and warm for June.
The Red Bridge Road fire is leaving behind a trail of destruction.
When the winds lined up with the slope, the flame lengths were 7 to 9 feet tall.
The flames consuming dry timber trees, grass, and other vegetation. Fire officials say a home and a cabin damaged.
And this was a wind-driven fire.
The winds spreading the fire to 44 acres.
We brought in the aircraft, 3 rotors and air tankers, flying retardant. So that really helped.
Fire resources in the air and boots on the ground going all in.
A whole lot of crews in here mopping up and securing things around the perimeter and around the structures.
Despite hot, dry, and breezy conditions creating critical fire conditions, officials say their efforts are working. While they don't want to be too optimistic before the red flag warning ends,
we feel like we should be winding this down to a really small organization by the weekend.
Parts of the country are still dealing with hazy skies and poor air quality due to wildfires burning in Canada. Maine is among those states dealing with traveling wildfire smoke. Meteorologist Christian Bridges breaks down the record start to Canada's wildfire season and if the smoky skies will end soon.
It seems like we can't catch a break in our weather lately. When it hasn't been raining, skies have been milky and hazy with air quality impacts in Maine. Scenes like this have been pretty common over the last couple of weeks, all due to the many fires that continue to burn in Canada. We've got 2 major clusters of them, one in the central and eastern portions of Canada and a bigger one in Alberta and British Columbia in Western Canada. While wildfires in Canada are not unusual this time of year, the vast number of acres burned are. So far in 2025, we have seen a staggering 7.2 million acres burned across Canada. Compare that to the last 2 years, which saw much more typical acreage burned by this point, with 2023 and 2024 closer to the average of 1.2 million acres burned at this point in the season. Now, those years were also bad smoke years for the U.S., but this year has just blown them out of the water. In fact, the number of acres burned in Canada is similar to the total area of Massachusetts and Rhode Island combined. So the big question is, will this situation change anytime soon? Well, we've got drought conditions across Canada right now, but there are some positive trends for rainfall in Canada this week, with a good soaking likely over those Western Canadian fires. However, not much rain in eastern Canada. Amounts look light there, and until those fires start to die down, smoke intrusions will continue.
Tracking the tropics this morning, and the eastern Pacific remains very active. First, Barbara has been downgraded to a post-tropical cyclone, while Tropical Storm Cosme is expected to weaken into a depression later today. Meteorologist Jenna Warren explains why they are getting weaker.
Actually all due to the water temperature. Both of these storms had the potential to do a dance called Fujiwara as they moved off to the north and west, and that really happens between hurricanes that interact in close proximity. But because of this cold pool of water, they are starting to break apart. It's still very active out there in the East Pacific, though.
And that activity is why the National Hurricane Center is also monitoring 2 other areas for possible storm formation. One south of Mexico has a 90% chance of becoming a named storm over the next week. The other one off the Central American coast has a 20% chance. In the Atlantic, there are several factors that cause hurricanes to develop. Meteorologist Alex Garcia shows us what those factors are and why this year we could see a more active season.
Far out in the Atlantic lies a storm factory. It's a place we call the main development region. It's where Africa stirs up the atmosphere and the ocean, it shapes it into hurricanes. Last year, the water here was the hottest that we have ever recorded. That heat powered a supercharged season. We had 5 major hurricanes. This year, well, the water is slightly cooler, but it's still boiling by historical standards, 1.5 degrees Celsius above the normal in key zones, more than enough to fuel trouble. And while the ocean itself stays hot, there's no La Nina, there's no El Nino, it's a neutral zone, and that means wind shear is weakening, and storms, well, they could thrive in this region. You know, it's easy to forget until it hits home. One storm is all it takes. So don't focus on the numbers, focus on being ready.
A North Carolina woman is thankful her 3 dogs are alive after confronting a bear in her backyard. Experts say over the past 10 years, bear activity has been on the rise. Kimberly King has more.
I had just been on the back porch, and all of a sudden I've been inside just briefly, and it sounded like a disaster out here. What we assumed had happened was that they had gotten a hold of a groundhog, and my roommate came running out to stop them from whatever they had. She came face to face with a bear.
It was terrifying. I saw the dogs run out the dog door. I ran out after them. Look, there's a bear right there.
Biologist Ashley Hobbs said Asheville has seen an increase in human and dog versus bear interactions in the past 10 years.
It sounds really like a defensive encounter. Again, very common bear behavior when they're confronted by something like a dog.
They definitely won't be out here unattended. We're used to sharing the land with the bears, and we've never had this type of issue before.
Tomorrow is the start of golf's U.S. Open in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Meteorologist Charlotte Carl gives us a look at the forecast.
I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. This week marks the 125th U.S. Open that is being played at Oakmont Country Club in Oakmont, Pennsylvania. While play is going to start out great, nice and sunny conditions, even though it has been dry up there, which leads to fast greens and sometimes a little bit higher of scores. This weekend, an unsettled pattern is going to begin thanks to a stationary front that will make its way over Pennsylvania. This stationary front will start out as a low pressure system with a branching off cold front rather. And then as that low moves closer to Pennsylvania and drops to the south, rain will start at the beginning of the weekend. So at the start of round 3 of play, expect some passing showers thanks to this cold front. Now Saturday into Sunday, that cold front will transition into a stationary front, which sometimes can lead to more widespread showers and storms, which is definitely something players will be contending with through rounds 3 and 4 of the U.S. Open.
The strawberry moon peaked last night, and plenty of people got a great view of it. The June full moon is known as the strawberry moon due to berries ripening this time of year. What made this year's appearance extra special is that the moon was at its lowest point on the horizon. It's known as a lunar standstill and last happened nearly 20 years ago. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll learn about a new method officials are using to control the invasive sea lamprey population in the Great Lakes, and we'll help you better understand how hail forms.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Astronomical summer is just days away, beginning on June 20th. As temperatures tick higher, it's important to know what illnesses can pop up if we get too much of a good thing, the heat, of course, and how to prepare for it. Meteorologist Julia Haley has more.
Whether you're in the mountains or at the coast, heat awareness is top of mind. Heat sensitivity during the summer months can affect various age groups.
People that are going to be the most sensitive to heat is definitely going to be our older adults, so over the age of 65, babies and younger children.
But sensitivity isn't limited to age groups. People with different health conditions can also be affected.
And then individuals with certain health conditions, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, mental health illnesses, those are a population that need to be really more mindful. And once again, checking on our friends and neighbors that we know might fit into these populations.
Heat illnesses can affect anyone. Whether you're out for a day at the lake or a hike in the mountains, the best thing you can do is find ways to stay cool, hydrated, and informed this summer.
When measuring heat, the location of a thermometer can make a big difference. Clothing color can also play a role in how hot you feel. Meteorologist Violet Skyborg explains.
The temperature itself, when we take our official observations, it's in one of these, a box with shade. And notice the temperature is 89 inside that box versus in the sun, it can get as high as 5 to 10 degrees warmer. So the reason for this is because in direct sunlight, we get solar radiation on the thermometer, which can raise the temperature. Also, if you have a dark house, that can absorb even more heat. Whereas the Stevenson's box, where we take our official observations, is painted white to reduce heat absorption. Plus, nearby houses, concrete can add radiant heat. And this box that we take our observations at is in an open field, so no influence from that. And it's 4 feet above the ground, so the surface also won't make an impact on our official observation temperatures. So how does the ground play a role? When air temperature is 90 degrees, shaded grass is the coolest. It can actually be cooler than the air temperature itself at 78. But grass in the sun can be about 5 degrees warmer. Concrete, even higher, 125. Asphalt can get up to 140 degrees, which can actually lead to skin burns in just a matter of seconds. Plus, the radiant heat from the solar radiation bounces off of these surfaces and can add to the air temperature, warming it up an additional 5 to 10 degrees. This is what's called urban heat island effect, and that's why the air temperature is warmer in cities than countrysides. It also makes a big difference what you wear, how you feel that air temperature, because the solar radiation absorbs into your clothing, especially if you're wearing dark colors. A black t-shirt left out in the sun for 10 minutes when the air temperature is 90 degrees can get up to 128 degrees. Bright colors around 120. A bigger difference though if you're wearing plain white. The albedo reflects the sun off of it, and it's still a bit warmer than the air temperature at 104, but still can help you feel cooler on those hot sunny days.
In the Texas Panhandle, heat isn't the only thing people are dealing with. There's also concern about rainfall. Yes, it's needed, but when too much of it arrives in a brief span, that can be problematic. Drew Powell has more.
Our annual rainfall isn't changing just a whole lot, but we're getting that rainfall in higher quantities less often. So that's really straining our stormwater system, which was developed over 50 years ago for smaller incremental amounts.
We're semi-arid here, so when we get 4.8 inches of rain within a week, that's really unusual. So we've been challenged.
Signs are posted in parts of Hutchinson County and also inside the city limits of Borger to warn people to be on the lookout for water on the road.
Our street crew, gets behind after big rains like this, trying to keep up with all the potholes. We ask that our residents be patient as we try to work through some of those. And then we also have to coordinate with TxDOT on any of the damages to the state highways that go through here. But that velocity can be really damaging.
You can hydroplane, and if people are out driving around and that water gets up, it can happen in just a few seconds. It can go from 1 inch to 4 or 5 inches, so you never know what's going to happen, so you don't need to be out when the weather's like that.
It's not just rain we see during severe weather this time of year. Hail is also common. But how does ice fall from the sky when it's not cold outside? Meteorologist Sharon Ray explains and also has tips you can follow if large hail causes property damage.
When we talk about severe hail, it has to be at least the size of quarters or greater. So once we get to that 1-inch hail size and greater, that's considered severe levels of hail. Keep in mind that hail forms from the water droplets going up and refreezing and then coming back down and melting and going back up. They get caught in updrafts. And as that water droplet goes up into the freezing air, the cold air, it refreezes and it won't come back down to the ground until the updraft isn't strong enough to hold it. So you need some pretty strong wind in that storm system in order to keep that hail up there. And indeed, if we did have that golf ball to hen-size egg hail, we're talking those winds going vertically in the cloud near 70 miles per hour. It's pretty turbulent up there, and it can also bring, of course, wind too with it. So if you ever have storm damage, and we have had calls from viewers saying they're trying to remember when the storm happened because they need to put in an insurance claim, I suggest you do that right after the storm because then we have more data to work with. Check for the damage as soon as the storms are out of the area and take clear photos of it. List all the damages and dates because you're going to be asked this by the insurance company. Review your insurance policy and then contact them, but make sure you get that information soon so you don't forget when that storm moved in.
A new study has unveiled a promising method to control the invasive sea lamprey population in the Great Lakes. Meteorologist Trevor Robideau spoke to officials in Michigan about the research and what it could mean for the future of sea lamprey control.
The sea lamprey is a resilient creature that has stood the test of time for millions of years. Originating from the Atlantic Ocean, this fish has caused numerous health and population problems for native fish in the Great Lakes for over 100 years. Traditionally, existing methods to control sea lamprey have been successful.
It's reduced lamprey numbers by 90%, and it's primarily done using lampricides to kill larval lampreys in streams and then barriers to block access to spawning habitats.
But in a recent study, a new method was hypothesized that could save resources. It involved preventing sea lamprey from spawning.
The theory and the idea is if you could take an adult male, sterilize it, release it into streams, if it then mates with a female and they both die, it's a dead end. They stop, you stop the life cycle.
Nick Johnson, a researcher at the Hammond Bay Biological Station and lead author for the study, set out to test if sterilizing male sea lampreys would further reduce spawning numbers in regions that they typically struggled with.
And what we found is that the number of larval lampreys in the systems went down by over 90%. And then the need for lampricide treatments also went down.
The study thus far has proven successful, and further research is being done to test viability in the future.
And time now for a short break, but first we soar over Seattle, Washington, and the beautiful Puget Sound.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Meteorologists often talk about dew point and humidity during their forecasts, but what exactly is dew point and how does it relate to relative humidity? Meteorologist Ryan Munn explains.
Dew point. It's a common phrase during the summertime, but what exactly is it? Put simply, the dew point is the temperature the air needs to cool to become fully saturated. On any given day, there is a certain amount of humidity or water vapor in the air. The more water vapor present, the higher the dew point. And when the air temperature cools to its dew point, any added moisture will form condensation. This could come in the form of frost on the grass, clouds, or even fog. And here's its relationship to relative humidity. The relative humidity will tell you how close the air temperature is to being 100% saturated. You can see that the further the two temperatures are apart, the lower the relative humidity. Once the dew point approaches the mid-60s, and especially the 70s, that's when the humidity becomes very noticeable. The 50s and lower have a much more refreshing feel.
If you're looking for more weather news and video, be sure to follow us on social media. Just search the National Weather Desk. We'll be right back.